This is a game that we will absolutely be talking about on Selection Day when we are announcing the 12 college football playoff teams. The winner of this one has a game and a half advantage because of how much I anticipate this committee utilizing the head-to-head to determine those teams that might be seeded 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hello and welcome to Always College Football. We are so happy to be here with you on a Thursday edition because you know what it means. If you've been with us before, you know what Thursdays are all about. It is preview day for some of the biggest games of this college football weekend. It is off the charts good. We have so many great matchups. We will do 9 breakdowns for you today, all deep in the weeds. I'm just telling you, if you've never been with us before, welcome, first and foremost. Secondly, this will be the best preview show for college football that you could possibly find. How do I know that? Because I listen to preview shows all throughout the week. I listen to guys preview games, and they do a great job. However, it's very surface level in many cases. That will not be the case today. We will dive deep in the weeds. We'll tell you the why. We'll tell you the how. We'll ask the questions that might determine the outcome here in some of the biggest games of the weekend. We also are going to make some picks. We will also give you a couple giant killers at the end of the show. Teams that are underdogs that I think could pull off an upset, might pull off an upset. Teams that I think you should be very, very careful with if you're playing them this weekend. So stay tuned for that. But we will not waste any additional time before we dive in. Before we do, I want to ask all of you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get the podcast. The podcast platform is the bread and butter. And while you're there, you guys have done an amazing job the last couple of weeks pushing back against the haters. Our ratings have been better as a result. People like to rate the show based on predictions or whether or not I like your team. You should rate the show on the quality of the content, not on individual picks. Because if I like you this week, it doesn't mean I'll like you next week. And if I hate you this week, it doesn't mean I'll hate you next week, right? I think that's important. So rate on the content that you're consuming, not so much the individual picks on a week-to-week basis. We also, if you're here with us via the ESPN College YouTube page, hit that thumbs up button. Really appreciate you guys. All right, let's dive in. Let's kick it off with a Friday night thriller between the Big 12 and the SEC. It's Auburn and the Baylor Bears. Auburn is a 2.5-point favorite on the road from McLean Stadium. This game will be 8 o'clock Eastern time on Fox. And if you're wondering why we're starting here, we go in chronological order. So this is not in order of priority. This is purely chronological, starting Friday night, 8 o'clock on Fox. The blackout on the Brazos. So it's going to be an intense and hostile atmosphere there in Waco, Texas. First meeting between the two programs since 1976. That was a 15-14 Baylor victory in Auburn. So it's been a while since they've played. Let's talk about Baylor a little bit last year. Shaky start. And then they ripped off 6 consecutive regular season wins that provided a ton of surge and a lot of momentum into this offseason. For Auburn, they've now had 4 straight losing seasons, and they desperately need to make an early statement to kind of prove that the program is back on the ascent with the talent they accumulated this offseason. Now, a pretty significant contrast in program perception. You look at Baylor. They have proven assets. They have a lot of returning production. They have home field advantage. They have momentum. Pretty much on the other side, it's Auburn. They have the SEC on their chest. They have a really talented roster that's made up mostly of blue chip talent, but it's kind of a projection. We're projecting what Auburn might be. We know what Baylor is. Let's talk about Baylor's overall kind of coaching staff, right? Dave Aranda, he's a defensive savant. We know that. He's the architect of the defense. He's the primary defensive play caller. He likes to create a lot of complexity with his defensive looks. He's one of the masters of simulated pressures. What is that? That's when you give off the impression that you're blitzing, but you're really only bringing 4 pass rushers. You're dropping out a defensive end. They have essentially abandoned position players. They like to use a lot of variety. They like to use hybrid players that could be pass rushers, drop back into coverage, or they could kind of just hold down the point and defend the run. They do a lot of different things. On the other side of the coin, it's Auburn's Hugh Freeze, who's tremendous as an offensive innovator. They love to use RPOs. They like to be aggressive. And the system is predicated on the quarterback making the correct decision post-snap. When it's done well, the conflict defender that they're pointing out has no answer. When it's done poorly, it can lead to negative plays and turnovers, which we have seen in the past, and we saw it a lot with Auburn last year. Let's go into the quarterback matchup quickly. Baylor's Sawyer Robertson enters the 25 season as the nation's returning leader in QBR at just under 84 last year. He was 5th in the country in that metric last season. He became the full-time starter in week 3. He can hurt you with his legs. He added 230 yards on the ground last year and 4 touchdowns. And I think by season's end, he will be a household name. You got to watch this kid. He is the real deal. I love watching him play. On the other side, it's Auburn's Jackson Arnold, top billed recruit, 5-star prospect, starts his career at Oklahoma, had some flashes, but was pretty much inconsistent throughout his time with turnovers, with indecisiveness, with an unwillingness to throw the football, showcased willingness to run as the games went along and was tough down the stretch, but he's been up and down. All right, here's the questions that will determine the outcome. 1, can Auburn run the football? That's a big key because I think when you look at how Dave Aranda tries to scheme his defense, he wants to create a lot of confusion. How can you avoid allowing him to create confusion? That's by running the football. So if they can run it with an improved offensive line, that will be huge for Auburn and trying to dictate the tempo and dictate the situation and staying on schedule offensively. Question number 2, if Auburn can't run it, can Dave Aranda create confusion for Jackson Arnold? Look, we know that this defense is engineered to make it very difficult for the quarterback to know exactly who the read keys are going to be. Won't really know what the numbers advantages might look like. And a guy that might be looking like a pass rusher might ultimately drop right where you were hoping to throw it. That confusion can be really challenging. And if Aranda is successful in creating that deception, that could neutralize the foundational advantage that the RPO provides, that RPO being a run-pass option. So it could be problematic if Auburn cannot consistently run the football on early downs and distance. Question number 3, can Baylor's offensive line control the line of scrimmage and run the football? Now, it's a veteran group. And if you look at their efficiency numbers along the offensive line, they were among the nation's best last year. They don't have a lot of depth. That is a problem. They also lost their number 2 running back, Dawson Pendergrass, who rushed for nearly 700 yards last year. And Bryson Washington's their go-to guy. He's their home run hitter. He went for over 1,000. But he was the lightning to Dawson Pendergrass. That's the thunder. So losing the number 2 back, they also have another guy in promising freshman Michael Turner that's dealing with some injuries. Don't know if he's going to be available. So they're a little bit thin along the offensive line, and they're a little bit thin at running back. But if they can run the ball early, that'd be huge because Bryson Washington was unbelievable last season. In just 10 and a half games, he ran for over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, was a freshman All-American, and he's got game-breaking speed. He can go the distance at any point. And Auburn's front 7, they were a bit of a question coming into the fall camp. But all reports sound like they have developed into a real strength. They have individual talent along the front, led by Keldrick Falk. They also have a good nose tackle in Bobby Jemison Travis. If those 2 guys play up to their potential, this group could go from being a question mark to being a strength very, very quickly. Question 4, can Auburn's weapons overwhelm Baylor's secondary? If you look at Auburn's wide receiver core, they have arguably one of the most talented groups in the entire SEC. Starts with Cam Coleman, the sophomore phenom, that's 6'3", big-bodied receiver that can be a dominant force. He had 8 touchdowns last year. He's projected to be one of the better wideouts in the country if utilized appropriately, but he's not alone. Eric Singleton, transfer over from Georgia Tech, back-to-back seasons of over 700 receiving yards while playing for the Yellow Jackets. He's got unbelievable top-end speed and can take the top off the defense at any point. They also have a couple other guys that will factor in to that rotation as well. Baylor's secondary is one of the bigger question marks entering this game. They struggled a little bit with consistency last year. They also have a couple guys that might be dinged up, led by their star, Carl Williams. Star being the position, not a superstar player, but that's the position, kind of that nickel position, hybrid safety, linebacker, cover guy. He's a little banged up. We'll see whether or not he actually can go. Question number 5, can Sawyer Robertson get the ball out before Auburn's pass rush gets home? That'll be a big question mark because if Auburn's pass rush is improved and for whatever reason Baylor can't run the ball really well, Sawyer Robertson's going to have to elevate his game to the next level. If he can, that will neutralize any advantage that Auburn might have over Baylor. And then finally, question 6. And not every game will have 6 questions, but this one, there's a lot of tentacles to it. Could be an advantage for Baylor, by the way. Does special teams play a role in the game? Baylor has legit difference maker at punter that was nearly 50 yards per punt last year in Palmer Williams. That can flip the field pretty quickly. Meanwhile, Auburn's star kicker, Alex McPherson, who's really accurate and has been talented, he's questionable going into this game. He has a serious illness that sidelined him for most of the season last year. And if he's unavailable to go, that could affect what Hugh Freeze does on 4th down in plus territory. The pick in this game, I'll take Baylor to win this game at home. I really like the quarterback advantage that Baylor has, and I think they will have enough in the home field environment to create enough big plays to keep Auburn in a difficult spot, potentially playing from behind. We'll go next to another game on Friday night that we're all very much looking forward to. It's the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets traveling to Boulder, Colorado to take on the Colorado Buffaloes. Georgia Tech's about a 4-point favorite right now. This game's 8 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN. This game's officially sold out. The home crowd is planning a stripe out, so that means there'll be pretty cool look there in Folsom Field. One thing I'm curious about here is that you have organizational stability with Georgia Tech going against a big talent infusion model that Colorado's used with success. If you look at Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, they've been pretty dang impressive the last couple years. Now, the last 2 years, they had a ton of roster turnover in 23. It led to inconsistent play. They built on that inconsistency last year and rode the Heisman caliber production of Shedeur Sanders and Heisman winner Travis Hunter. Those guys were amazing. Shedeur Sanders threw for over 4,100 yards and 37 touchdowns last season. Travis Hunter went for over 1,200 receiving yards, 15 touchdowns, and became the 2nd overall pick. The season opener will kind of tell us whether or not Deion Sanders has really created a true program, because we know he had star power. That's not up for debate. Now, what does the foundation look like underneath that star power that has since departed? A victory would be massive in validating the strategy of continuing to kind of turn the roster over and utilizing the transfer portal at their disposal. On the other side, Georgia Tech's Brent Key has tried to be physical. They've tried to be tough. They've gone out and they've really done a good job of establishing an identity with great speed on the perimeter and a physical toughness, a nice brand of football there on the interior. Let's go to the quarterback matchup. Colorado's Caden Salter. In 2023, he was amazing. Accounted for 44 total touchdowns, 32 through the air, 12 on the ground, led Liberty at the Fiesta Bowl. But that was against one of the weakest schedules in college football. Last year, that schedule strength improved, and it wasn't as good. They struggled a little bit. Caden Salter struggled, and his playing style is very different from that of what they utilized under Shedeur Sanders. He's a dynamic dual-threat guy who's going to be a designed runner, has elite top-end speed, and not necessarily a guy that's going to stand in the pocket and pick you apart. On the other side is Georgia Tech's Haynes King. Tremendous growth last year. He was so efficient, completed a school record 73% of his passes, went for over 2,100 yards, just 14 touchdowns, but the big number is 2 interceptions. That was a huge jump from where he was in 23 when he led the ACC with 16 picks. Question number 1, can Colorado stop the run? Georgia Tech's offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner, does a great job. The scheme that he runs is built on a powerful run game that's one of the best in the ACC. They went for nearly 190 yards per game last year. This ground and pound approach is the foundation of what they are. Their running back, Jamal Haynes, is amazing. He's their leading rusher, electric, open field, and the offensive line. That's a bit of a question mark because they are rebuilding up front, and they do have 3 new starters to fill in off of a group that was really good. We'll see exactly how that works. On the defensive side for Colorado, defensive coordinator Robert Livingston did an amazing job last year. Across the board, they improved. They allowed nearly 12 points fewer per game than they did in 2023. They allowed over 100 yards less per game than the previous year. And the heart of the defense is that front, a defense that led the Big 12 in sacks in 2024. So that front is going to be huge for Colorado in stopping the run. And if they can, they got a real shot of pulling off the upset. Question number 2, can Colorado create chemistry in the passing game? Now, Caden Salter is going to be thrown to an entirely new group of wide receivers. and they were assembled almost exclusively from the transfer portal. The starters look like Joseph Williams from Tulsa, Sincere Brown from Campbell, and then returning sophomore Draylon Miller, who's probably going to operate from the slot. That's going against a Georgia Tech defense that, even though they have a new coordinator on that side of the ball in Blake Gideon, they have a lot of experience and they have a very disciplined secondary that will not allow a lot of big plays. Question number 3, which quarterback will do a better job protecting the football? In 2024, we know that Haynes King was amazing with ball security. We talked about just 2 interceptions all season. But he's going against a Colorado defense that was great last year when creating chaos and forcing mistakes by the opposition. They forced 26 turnovers last year. Caden Salter has at times been a little bit turnover prone in his tenure as a starting quarterback. He's got 17 interceptions over the last 3 seasons, but this Georgia Tech defense struggled to generate takeaways last year. They managed to turn people over just 11 times. I will take Georgia Tech in this game. I think they'll control the line of scrimmage. I think they'll get a win in what should be a hard-fought battle. Let's go to the marquee game of the weekend, depending on who you ask. It's the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns traveling to Columbus to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State around a 2.5-point favorite, but that number has fluctuated between 1.5 and 2.5. 12 o'clock Eastern time, this game will be on Fox. This is a rematch of last year's college football playoff semifinal. In that Cotton Bowl game, Ohio State, of course, emerged with a 2-touchdown victory, but it wasn't secured until the final moments when Jack Sawyer had the strip sack. They take it back to the house, put the game on ice en route to a national championship. This might be a battle between the 2 best rosters in the sport. So sit back, grab your popcorn, and enjoy the fireworks. It's going to be amazing. It features 2 of the best coaches in the sport. Steve Sarkisian, an amazing offensive mind, but has done a tremendous job of revitalizing a proud Texas program and stockpiling it with talent all over the roster. Ohio State and Ryan Day, he has been incredible there in Columbus. A 30-win against 3-loss campaign in his tenure. The guy almost never loses against anybody not named Michigan. Yes, he lost to Oregon last year, but that was close. If it's not Michigan, Ohio State has had just about everybody's number in the Ryan Day tenure dating back over the last few years. Let's look at the quarterback matchup. I think there is a heavy, heavy emphasis on the quarterback play in this game. I don't think that should surprise anybody. Let's start with Texas's Arch Manning. This is the long-awaited era that we've all been waiting for as college football fans. Regardless of who you're rooting for, I think everybody is naturally curious to see what Arch Manning does this upcoming season. Now, he's not a complete unknown. There was a lot of promise shown in relief last year when he filled in for an injured Quinn Ewers. He was 2-0 in his starts, but it wasn't against top-flight competition. However, he did show off a skill set that was pretty remarkable. In the game against UT San Antonio, he became the first quarterback in the FBS or the NFL in the last 25 years to record a touchdown pass of over 75 yards, a touchdown run of over 65 yards, and another touchdown pass of over 50 yards, all in the same game. So the ceiling for Arch Manning is outrageous. Now, can he live up to the potential? We'll find out against top-flight competition, because this will be a huge step up in competition than anything he has seen up until this point. On the other side, it's Ohio State's Julian Sayin, emerged victorious from a very competitive preseason quarterback battle to replace the departing Will Howard. Really incredible pedigree. We know he's a former 5-star product. We also know he's a number 3 quarterback in the country, or depending on the service, a top 3 quarterback in the country in the 2024 recruiting class. And he was the MVP of the Elite 11 finals a couple years back. Now, we have not seen him on the field very much. He had just 27 snaps last year. Those are scattered across 4 games. He completed 5 of 12 passes for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. Over the last 20 years in college football, quarterbacks making their first ever start against a team ranked number 1 in the nation are a combined 0-18. So that is significant when evaluating this possibility for Julian Sayin. Question number 1. Can Texas's revamped O-line rise to the occasion? Now, this group, for the most part, is undergoing a total overhaul. They have to replace 4 of their 5 starters from a group that was a finalist last year for the Joe Moore Award. They have to replace a staggering 4,000 plus offensive snaps from the 2024 season. They also lost a pretty significant rotational player in a preseason knee injury to Andre Kojo, who was in a battle for that starting right tackle spot. Now, Steve Sarkisian knows this. I expect him to get the ball out of Arch Manning's hands quickly. I expect him to try and neutralize the pass rush with deception throws, screen passes, draws, what have you, to take advantage of some inexperienced defensive ends. Because on the other side, Ohio State, their defensive line, they have some similar reloading that they need to do. Now, they lost their entire starting front off the national championship run last year. JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Tyleik Williams, and Ty Hamilton. They're all gone. However, those guys are going to be backfilled by guys that played a lot of football over the last few years. You got a junior in Kenyatta Jackson. You got a senior in Caden Curry. Those have both been playing a lot of football the last few years. You also, on the interior, have some guys that could rise to the occasion in McDonald and Houston, who they both really like on the interior of that defensive line. So they're all blue chip players across the front. They might not have that big game experience as a starter, but they've played enough football to know that group can potentially take over the game if Texas's offensive line is not up to the task. Let's go to question number 2. How does Texas handle the Ohio State weapons? We already know about Ohio State's wide receivers. It's the best, arguably the deepest group of wide receivers in the entire country. It all starts with Jeremiah Smith, nightmare matchup. He's nearly 225 pounds at 6'3" and change. He is arguably the best overall player in college football. He's a legitimate Heisman Trophy contender, and he's coming off one of the most ridiculous freshman seasons we've ever seen. Went for 76 catches, 1,300 yards, and 15 touchdowns. However, the last time he played against the Texas Longhorns, Texas used a really impressive game plan against Jeremiah Smith. They held him to a staggering 1 catch for 3 yards. Now, Texas defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski is amazing. Can they replicate the successful strategy that they used in the Cotton Bowl a few months back? That's where they dedicate 2 defenders to Jeremiah Smith pretty much the entire game. They have to kind of pick their poison. Did they double Jeremiah Smith with a corner and All-American safety Michael Taft, which potentially leaves you vulnerable to the other 2 weapons that Ohio State has at their possession? Junior Carnell Tate is no slouch. He had 52 for 730 last year, and their slot receiver Brandon Ennis also very capable of beating one-on-one coverage. Now, Texas's secondary was extremely good last year. They allowed the 7th fewest passing yards per game in the country at just under 174 yards a game. And they finished tied for first in the FBS with 22 interceptions. So what will Pete Kwiatkowski do? Will he double Jeremiah Smith and leave the other guys on islands? Or will he play a little bit more across the board, trying to defend all parts of the field? I'll be fascinated to see exactly how they do it. I think they'll double Jeremiah Smith. I don't know how you can let that guy get open as often as he did throughout last season, except for the game against the Texas Longhorns. Let's go to question 3. Can Texas's pass rush get home? Now, this is an incredible group of edge rushers. It's led by sophomore edge rusher Colin Simmons, who really burst on the scenes last year with 9 sacks as a true freshman. But he's not the only one. They have a few others that can all create a lot of problems, like Ethan Burke and Trey Moore. They have a bunch of guys that can breathe fire off the edge. But off the ball is Anthony Hill. He is the heart and soul of this defense. Had 113 tackles last year, had 8 sacks. He can blitz. He can play off the edge. He's an eraser at the second level. And they're going against an Ohio State offensive line that is really, really solid on the interior. I look at where they're at guard to guard. I think they're really good. Luke Montgomery, Carson Hintzman, Tigre Shabola, that's a real strength. The edges, a little bit of a question mark. So the strength of the edge rushers against what might be a little bit of a question mark at tackle is something we'll be watching very early in this ballgame. Question number 4, how good are Texas's weapons? Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, Mosley, transfer over from Stanford. Handful of really talented freshmen. I think a very under-the-radar addition of Jack Endries from Cal. He'll play the tight end spot. He can stretch the field vertically. How good will this group be? Because we know what Ohio State's going to try to do. They want to play a lot of man. They want to create some confusion for Arch. And if those guys can win on one-on-ones, that could alter how Matt Patricia wants to play, the new defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Question number 5, maybe the biggest question here. Which quarterback do you trust more? This one's pretty simple for me. It's Arch Manning. And I watched every single one of Arch Manning's passes from last year, and I came away really, really impressed. Great deep ball accuracy, pretty good on the intermediate, and that's where he was last year. I'm imagining that collectively has improved drastically from where he was the year ago. I also went back and watched every throw from Julian Sayin last season. I was a little bit underwhelmed with some of the accuracy. Couple throws that were way off the mark. He did have a really nice throw on the move that resulted in his only touchdown in his career. I do think he throws a nice ball. I think it's a pretty ball. I think he'll be much better than he was a year ago. But right now, based on what I saw on tape last season, Arch Manning has a pretty significant edge over Julian Sayin. Now, I think Julian Sayin might have better personnel around him at wide receiver, but we'll find that out as the season goes along. But because of the quarterback edge I'm giving to Texas, I will take the Texas Longhorns to win this game in Columbus in what should be a thrilling Week 1 opener. Moving next to another game there in the noon window, it's the Tennessee Volunteers taking on the Syracuse Orange. This game will be 12 o'clock Eastern time on ABC. Tennessee, fresh off a 10-3 season, amazing run, 6-2 in the SEC, berth in the inaugural 12-team college football playoff. Josh Heupel has officially restored the glory that is Tennessee football. They've kind of set a new standard, 3 straight seasons of 9 or more wins. We haven't seen that in quite a while. Now, this offseason was a little tumultuous. Unexpected transfer of their quarterback and Nico Iamaleava, who decided to transfer to UCLA, and what was a very high-profile and dramatic saga, if you will. And his exit was kind of compounded the issues that they had losing big-time contributors off last year's team, like edge rusher James Pierce, second-round defensive tackle departure Omar Norman Lott, and what I think was their best player on their team last year in Dylan Sampson, their running back. So kind of a off-season of turnover, an off-season of chaos, I guess, if you will. But I'm still bullish on Tennessee in the long term this season. I think they'll be better for the departure of Iamaleava in the long term, maybe not so much in the short term. Meanwhile, Syracuse, a lot of turnover on their side as well. They had one of the most incredible rises under first-year head coach Fran Brown last year, a program that had struggled with consistency for a really long time. They go and reel off a 10-3 record. They also kind of rewrote the record books up there with Kyle McCord, who set the ACC record with nearly 4,800 passing yards. But McCord, along with the leading rusher, their top 3 receivers, they're all gone. So what does that mean? It means we have 2 teams that we're going to find out a lot about this weekend, that's for sure. Let's start with Tennessee's Joey Aguilar. This guy's been around for a lot. We've seen him for a while. We've seen him play a lot of football at Appalachian State. Had that brief offseason stop at UCLA. Iamaleava transfers in. Aguilar transfers out. He ends up where Iamaleava departed from. Good setup for Tennessee, that's for sure. You get a veteran that's played a lot of football. Now, he has seen a ton. He is no stranger to this game at the FBS level. He's got 24 career starts, thrown for over 6,700 yards, 56 touchdowns. His experience does come with a little bit of a caveat. He is a little bit turnover prone. He's thrown 24 interceptions over the last 2 years, including 14 picks in just 11 games last season. So they got to coach that out of him here in what should be a quarterback-friendly offense. On the other side is Syracuse's Steve Angeli. He is a Notre Dame transfer. Now, while Kyle McCord was aggressive, pushing the ball downfield, high-volume thrower, Steve Angeli is a game manager, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. He's had 21 appearances for Notre Dame, was really, really efficient and terrific at protecting the football. He completed nearly 73% of his passes, 770 yards, 10 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He's really poised, he's really accurate, and he makes great decisions. Question number 1, how effective will Tennessee's passing attack be? Now, they got to replace a lot of their receiving production from a year ago, but I'm really excited about Mike Matthews, who was at one point a 5-star recruit, has shown some flashes throughout the course of his freshman year. Now, stepping into a possible number one role, he should take a huge step. I also like Braylon Staley, who's got a lot of speed coming out of the slot. And then maybe it's this year that Tulane transfer Chris Brazzell, big body, legitimate dude on the outside that can win some contested catches. Maybe this is the year that he reaches his potential. So I think the receiver core should be pretty good. But if you look at the strength of what Syracuse has coming back, it might be in their secondary. Their safety spot is one of the deepest in the ACC. They have a lot of experience. They have some playmakers, Deuce Chestnut, Devin Grant, and Barry Buxton. Those three guys combined to create what should be a formidable back end for the Orange. Let's go to question 2. What about the Syracuse's passing attack? All right, they lost their top 3 pass catchers, Aronde Gadsden, Trevor Pena, and Jackson Meeks. They're all gone. And the new primary weapons are going to be Daryl Gill and Justice Ross Simmons. And then they also have Jonte Cook, who is a really talented transfer from Texas. He could very well become the number one guy as the season goes along. Now, the strength of the defense for Tennessee might be in the secondary. They are anchored by a great corner in Jermod McCoy, who was an AP second-team All-American last year. McCoy has been a true lockdown corner. He did get injured in the spring, so we'll monitor him closely. Assuming he can go, assuming he plays up to his potential, that's massive because he can lock down one side of the field. It's a deep group, though, across the board with Ricky Gibson back on the other side and a couple of really solid safeties as well. Let's go to question number 3. Who controls the tempo in the game? I think Tennessee wants to turn this into a track meet. I think they want to run it. They want to ramp it. They want to utilize tempo. They want to make sure they're able to create good looks in the run game to take some of the pressure off Joey Aguilar. I think Syracuse's best path to victory might be to kind of slow things down. Turn this into a bit of a methodical, grind it out, keep away style of attack. Because if their offense is on the field, that means Heupel's offense is on the sideline, and that's probably a good thing for Syracuse. Let's go to question 4. Which team will better be able to run the football? Now, we know that Syracuse has a lot of pretty talented transfer offensive linemen, but if you look at Tennessee's defensive front, led by Joshua Josephs and Bryson Eason, I think they could potentially dominate the line of scrimmage, which would lead to Syracuse becoming a little one-dimensional and potentially ineffective. Now, if you look at Tennessee, they are 23-0 under Josh Heupel when they rush for at least 180 yards in a game. Now, new look offensive line, which lost 4 starters off last season's team. This group still should be very, very solid across the board. They're very talented. They did a decent job in the portal, going out and getting guys that started at the Power 5 level last year. They also added a running back from Duke and Star Thomas that I really like. And the Orange got to replace a lot of production and leadership with their linebacker core and within their front. I'll take Tennessee in this game, but I think it has a chance to be a little bit closer than the experts might think. We'll go next to a battle of 2 historic programs. This will be 3:30 Eastern time on ABC. It's the Alabama Crimson Tide traveling to Tallahassee to take on the Florida State Seminoles. Alabama is right now around a 13.5-point favorite. For Alabama, this game is a massive test in year 2 under Caleb DeBoer. An opportunity to kind of show that the 9-4 record from a year ago was a transitional anomaly. This offseason, they focused on retaining their core defensive philosophy. They bring in offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb to install a more authentic version of the high-powered offensive attack that led to winning a lot of games at Washington and Fresno in the years past. Florida State, on the other side, this is going to be a very interesting game because this was a pretty radical offseason as far as the overhaul is concerned, and they got to climb out of the cellar of a 2-10 campaign. Look, they opted to go in a completely different direction. They dismissed both coordinators, and they bring in guys that have a lot of skins on the wall with the success they've had at the college level. Their offensive coordinator is Gus Malzahn, former head coach of the Auburn Tigers and the UCF Knights. He's now going to be calling the plays. Their defensive coordinator is former Nebraska defensive coordinator Tony White, going to install a completely different defensive scheme. And this will hopefully lead to an aggressive group on defense, but the personnel is a big question mark. There's 23 new players by way of the portal, and a bunch of guys that we haven't seen wearing Seminole uniforms are going to be expected to play at a really high level if Florida State's going to reach their potential this season. Let's go to the quarterback matchup. Alabama's Ty Simpson is finally the starting quarterback for the Tide. Now, you thought he might have a chance to be the guy 2 years ago. He got beat out by Jalen Milroe in the preseason, and Jalen Milroe went on to have what was a fun career to watch, but at times very erratic career. Some weeks he was incredible. Other weeks it was not fun to watch. Now, this is a very different style player in Ty Simpson. He's more natural pocket passer. He's going to get the ball out quickly. He's going to have a plan when the ball is snapped. And I think he's a little bit more in line with what they've had success with in the past. I think Ty Simpson is also sneaky mobile. He's not a guy that's going to kill you with his legs, but he can extend plays and he can do some things with his legs and running the football that you better be prepared to defend, because we know he can throw it, but he can also break you down a little bit in scramble situations as well. On the other side, Florida State's Thomas Castellanos is kind of the opposite of Ty Simpson. He's played a ton of football, and he is super dynamic and one of the most athletic and fun players to watch when he's playing at his very best. Problem is, he's a little bit erratic as a passer. However, his rushing ability I would consider to be super elite. He ran for over 1,100 yards at Boston College in 2023. That led all FBS quarterbacks in rushing yards 2 years ago. Now, the passing has shown some signs of improvement. He did throw 18 touchdowns against just 5 interceptions last year, but he is still a little bit inconsistent with a career completion percentage below 60%. If he can all of a sudden be efficient throwing the football, this guy could become incredibly difficult to defend on a week-to-week basis. Let's go to question number 1. How much does the addition of Ryan Grubb impact Alabama's offense? Now, you take Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator, plus Kalen DeBoer. They've been together for a long time, but in their last 4 seasons where we've had DeBoer as the head coach and you've had Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator in his time at Fresno and at Washington, their offenses averaged nearly 480 total yards per game. It was utilizing mostly a vertical passing attack that uses pre-snap motions, a bunch of formations, complex route concepts that can attack the defense pretty much in every square inch of the field. So you got to defend a lot of space when playing against Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer when they are mixed together. Question number 2, how does Florida State adjust to their new defensive structure? Now, Tony White has implemented the 3-3-5 scheme. 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. This should create a certain amount of chaos that is very difficult for the opposing offense to identify. This leads to kind of a little bit less structure, and it favors speed, athleticism, and versatility. Now, it's hard. It's very, very difficult to play against this style of attack. The only challenge with this front is that its biggest weakness is they are potentially susceptible to a really powerful, well-executed rushing attack. With only 3 defensive linemen on the field, 3 big guys, 3 linebackers that are a little bit undersized, you can be a little bit vulnerable to a team that can pound you on the ground. Question number 3, can Alabama's offensive line win along the line of scrimmage? Alabama's offensive line should be a significant strength this year. They're anchored by a big left tackle in Caden Proctor, who's pushing the scales at nearly 370 pounds. They also have a veteran center in Parker Brailsford, who is enormous in this matchup. Not only does he have an inexperienced quarterback, but Parker Brailsford has played a lot of football dating back to his time at Washington and last year as a starting center for the Crimson Tide. He will be responsible for identifying Florida State's complex looks and blitz packages. That will take some of the pressure off Ty Simpson and allow that offensive line to kind of work and iron out some of the challenges this scheme might present. Florida State's defensive line is almost entirely rebuilt. Now, they got to execute a really complex scheme. That will be interesting nonetheless. But the interior will be led by an enormous defensive tackle in Darrell Jackson, who's 340 pounds. He's got a ton of physical ability, but has to elevate his game because at times he was a little inconsistent just a year ago. The edge positions with James Williams and Jason Jenkins, those guys are going to have to play at a high level as well. This might be the key to the game overall, because if Florida State can generate pressure and they can kind of stop the run without attributing too many numbers to the box, that would be huge. If they can't, they might be forced to kind of roll the dice on every single play to get extra players there to defend the run. Question number 4, can Gus Malzahn's offense establish the run? Now, we know what this offense is all about. It's a power run game, a lot of tempo. They're going to utilize dual threat quarterback, and the ground attack, that up-tempo approach, it kind of tires out defenses. It prevents substitutions, and it forces a lot of defenses to kind of simplify their coverages, which make things easier on the quarterback. Now, the entire operation, also having to play against it in week 1, makes it even more challenging because most guys are not going to be in game shape week 1. Doesn't matter how much you do in the offseason to prepare. To be in actual football shape is something that takes a little time. So it's especially difficult to play against Gus Malzahn early in the season with the tempo that he likes to employ. Now, Alabama's front 7 should be an improved unit from a year ago. There were some growing pains in 2024, but they have some cornerstone pieces, mostly in Deontay Lawson. Now, Deontay Lawson could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. He's coming off a knee injury, but he's an eraser there at the second level. He's lost some weight. He feels more active, and I think he is going to be very, very important in this defense reaching its potential ceiling this season. Another guy to watch is LT Overton, who they might move around. You could play him inside, play him outside, but he had a great campaign last year and should build on it this upcoming season. The one name to know is James Smith, is a guy with a high ceiling that is just poised to break through as that next great defensive tackle for the Crimson Tide. Question number 5, can Alabama contain Thomas Castellanos? Because we know what Castellanos is. He has a propensity to escape the pocket and create massive yardage. His most dangerous weapon is playing off script. Where things break down, he runs around, turns what would be a sack for most quarterbacks into a 20, 30, 40-yard gain. Now, Alabama has tried to create a look in practice all week long by utilizing a wide receiver in Jalen Mbakwe to simulate the explosiveness that Thomas Castellanos has. Now, Mbakwe was a former high school quarterback, so he played the scout team all week to try to simulate how good Castellanos can be when things start to break down. But the ultimate goal for Alabama is to force Castellanos to operate from the pocket as a traditional pocket passer. That's his most significant weakness. If they can keep him in the pocket, that would go a long way in creating opportunities for them downfield. He's also only 5'10", so vision could become problematic if that pocket collapses around him. And then question number 6, will Alabama's weapons take over the game? This matchup might represent the most potential personnel mismatch in the game. Ryan Williams, we all know what he was last year as a true freshman. He's going to be bigger, he's going to be stronger, and I would expect him to move around. You'll see him on the outside, you'll see him in the slot, you'll see him motioning out of the backfield. He's a very, very important piece to this Alabama team, but not to be outdone, Jeremy Bernard, who is going to be, I think, a breakthrough player for Alabama this year. And then Isaiah Horton, the transfer from Miami, who's a big-bodied matchup nightmare that can win the contested catches in the red zone and on third down. Florida State's secondary is almost entirely new. They're relying on a lot of transfers and inexperienced players. They do have talent, but that talent has not often played together. So we'll see how they match up against what should be an elite wide receiver core for the Crimson Tide. I'm taking the Crimson Tide in this game. I think it might be close early on, and then Alabama will settle in defensively. They'll create some big plays offensively. I think they can eventually wear down Florida State by running the football in the second half. Let's go next to another marquee battle involving two possible playoff contenders. The LSU Tigers will travel to Death Valley and take on the Clemson Tigers. The Clemson Tigers are about a 4-point favorite. This game will be 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. We love that this game is involving two teams that call Death Valley home. This one will be played in the purple and orange section of Death Valley, not the gold and purple. This is going to be amazing because Clemson has been so good at home. They have won 31 of their last 33 non-conference games at home. And the last time these two programs met, it was in the national championship game following the 2020 season. So, or 2019 season, 2020 national championship game. So LSU capped off that perfect season with Joe Burrow and company with a 42-25 victory. This is a big clash in philosophies. Bigger picture here, you have Clemson on one side, LSU on the other side. Clemson and Dabo Swinney, they're all about continuity. They're all about culture. They're all about cohesiveness. They enter this season with the most returning production of anyone in the entire country. That's a testament to a program that's built on long-term development and a reluctance to heavily engage in the NCAA transfer portal. Now, Sweeney kind of views his program as a 4-year developmental. We're going to recruit guys, we're going to grow them within our program, and we're going to send them out as developmental players that really are true to who we are. This develops a lot of loyalty, it develops a lot of continuity, and that is kind of the emphasis and the philosophy for Dabo Sweeney and piecing together this roster. LSU, on the other side, led by Brian Kelly, they're completely different. Now, they look every year at some of the deficiencies that they have on their roster. And Brian Kelly's been really aggressive in utilizing the transfer portal. He brought in 18 newcomers this past year. They were the number one portal team in the country this offseason. And it's going to be fascinating to see how those new pieces gel with some of the proven commodities from a year ago. One other storyline in this game is that Brian Kelly has struggled in week one games. Since arriving at LSU, he's winless in week one. The program is currently riding a 5-game losing streak in season openers dating back to 2019. And since 2022, LSU is just 4-8 against the spread against ranked opponents and has lost 3 consecutive week one games against non-conference foes. So we know what that's all about, right? Those are the two programs in a nutshell. Differing philosophies. We'll see what wins out. You have 2 Heisman caliber quarterbacks in this game. The quarterback matchup is as good as we'll find maybe in college football all season. Let's start with Cade Klubnik of the Clemson Tigers. The year-over-year growth from his first year as a starter to his second year starter was amazing. This is now year 3. Amazing 2024 campaign. Threw for over 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns against just 6 interceptions. He's a legitimate dual threat. He really improved in this asset last year. He can run it, had a couple real long runs, a couple big plays created, like against Pitt, against NC State, went for over 460 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. He also is amazing when it comes to protecting the football. Makes great decisions and has a talented wide receiver core on the outside that he really trusts and has developed a great rapport with. On the other side, Garrett Nussmeier. Now, he's one of only 2 quarterbacks in LSU history that has gone over 4,000 passing yards in the season. The other is Joe Burrow. He had 29 touchdowns as well, but he is aggressive. He is a gunslinger, and that mentality kind of comes with a slightly higher risk. He had 12 picks last year, double the number of Klubnik, and posted an overall quarterback rating that was less than Cade Klubnik a year ago. Question number 1, can LSU's offensive line hold up against Clemson's defensive line? LSU's offensive line, that was a huge strength last year, but they were decimated by departures. They lost 4 starters of the NFL draft. Now, the unit has replaced a lot of experience with a lot of talent, but some of those guys are a little bit unproven. They also have a few transfers that they're relying on, so they don't have a lot of cohesion along the front. And Brian Kelly has even gone out to say, yeah, we could see as many as 6, maybe 7, maybe even 8 offensive linemen throughout the game. So it goes to show you that they're not really sure exactly what that offensive line is going to look like, and they might be willing to change from drive to drive. Clemson, on the other side, their defensive line is considered one of the best, if not the best, in the entire country. They're anchored by some preseason All-Americans, Peter Woods on the interior at defensive tackle, and TJ Parker off the edge. Parker had 11 sacks last year, and if you look at Woods, he now slides back to his more natural position. He had to play a lot of defensive end last year because he didn't have the depth. Now he's back at his natural position. I think he has a chance to really take over the game every single week. The other side of this is that Joe Sloan, his opening script, the offensive coordinator for LSU, it's got to be a lot of quick passes, a lot of screens, a lot of draw plays to get the ball out of Garrett Nussmeier's hands quickly to kind of neutralize that pass rush for the Clemson Tigers. Question number 2, how much better will LSU's defensive line be? Now, a lot of people have said this might be the most improved unit on the team. They've been rebuilt and fortified through the transfer portal. They've improved their depth. This depth allows them to roll fresh bodies regularly. A lot of people in camp have said they've noticed a serious difference with the pass rush getting home more frequently and faster than it has in the past. Now, Clemson's offensive line is a strength. They have a lot of pieces back. That was a group that was one of the best in the country and is currently one of the most experienced groups in the country as far as returning starts. Question number 3, can and will LSU run the football? If you look at Clemson's numbers last year, they really struggled against the run. It was shocking to see the numbers when you dive in a little bit. They were 16th in the ACC in rushing defense. They allowed more than 160 yards per game. However, LSU was dead last in the SEC last year running the football. They ran for just 116 yards per game. They got to find a way to run the ball effectively with Caden Durham, which would kind of protect the offensive line, would control the tempo, and would keep Clemson's offense on the sideline. If they can run it and keep them out of obvious third and long passing situations, that would kind of not allow Clemson's defensive line to tee off and allow those pass rushers to get home. So will LSU run the football? Because they did not try to run it enough last year. Question number 4. Which team can better manufacture big plays? Now, if you look at Clemson's receiving core, it's one of the nation's best. They have an incredible trio of Antonio Williams, who is probably their best overall player. You got TJ Moore, who's big, physical, strong on the outside, and you have the speedster and Bryant Wesco. Those guys create a lot of problems for the opposing secondary. LSU is going to counter with their own really talented group of pass catchers led by slot receiver Aaron Anderson and Barryon Brown, who's coming over from Kentucky, is really good with the ball in his hands, also will be pivotal in the return game. Those guys will get a lot of looks for the LSU Tigers quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. A pivotal matchup will be how LSU's secondary, which has been bolstered by transfers and supposedly is playing with a lot of confidence this offseason, how will they handle the challenge of matching up against Moore, Wesco, and Antonio Williams, a trio that doesn't take a backseat to many in college football. Question number 5. How important is Adam Randall going to be in this game? Probably wondering, who's Adam Randall? Well, he was a wide receiver for a number of years. He has since moved to the running back spot because there's not great depth right now at running back for the Clemson Tigers. He's 6'2", he's 235 pounds. He's going to be a bit of a power back. So how will that be handled? Will he roll some with Gideon Davidson, the talented true freshman, who has drawn some early comparisons to the former Clemson star, Travis Etienne? If the converted receiver proves to be effective running between the tackles and constantly generate positive yards on the ground, that will force LSU's defense to really respect the run, which would open up the playbook for Garrett Riley, which would mean play action passing and downfield passing could open up for Clemson. And then finally, question number 6, can Clemson force a big mistake from Garrett Nussmeier? When the game has gotten tight, Nussmeier has at times tried to do a little too much. There's been times when he's been masterful, like he was against Ole Miss down the stretch. There's also been times when he's tried to do a little too much, like he did against A&M last year. If he makes a big mistake, that could be huge in this game. I'm taking the Clemson Tigers to win this game. I think their advantage with their defensive line against an inexperienced offensive line gives them a pretty significant edge in what should be one of the biggest games of the season here early on. The Utah Utes will travel to Los Angeles to take on the UCLA Bruins. This game's at like 11 o'clock on Saturday night. I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be a late night, but we'll all be in it together. The UCLA Bruins and the Utah Utes enter the matchup after very disappointing 5-7 records in 2024. We have Nico Iamaleava, who is a specimen at the position. He's tall, he's athletic, he can throw it downfield, but he has at times been a bit inconsistent on some of the downfield throws, going against Utah's Devin Dampier. Now, I love Devin Dampier. This guy is the real deal. In 2024, he was 12th in the FBS in points responsible for. He was second in the Mountain West in total passing yards. He already has a pre-existing chemistry with his offensive coordinator and operates behind an incredible offensive line for the Utah Utes. Question number 1, how will UCLA's offense look? Now, out goes Eric Bieniemy. The roster and the talent has kind of shifted. They were not good last year, 18 points per game. They got held to 17 or fewer points on 9 different occasions. In comes Tino Sinceri from Indiana. Did a great job last year and really helped this Indiana offense become one of the most efficient and effective in the entire country. They averaged over 41 points per game. That was second in the FBS. Now, the UCLA offensive line was a liability last year. Will they be again this year? We will find out. Question number 2, how will Utah's offense look? The new offensive system is going to change drastically from what they've been in the past. They go out and they hire Jason Beck from New Mexico. Beck brought his starting quarterback, Dampier. Beck in 2024 at New Mexico was unbelievable. They were first in the Mountain West in total offense. They were fourth in the entire FBS. They averaged 484 yards per game. It's going to be a little bit more of a modern spread offense, which is a pretty big departure over what Utah has used in the past, which was a little bit more pro style. Question number 3, can Utah's offensive line wear down UCLA's front? Now, Utah, they have NFL tackles. And Spencer Fanu, Lomu on the other side, these guys are amazing. They are the strength of the team. They're going against a UCLA defensive front that needs to be the anchor of this defense. Problem is they're relying on guys that are coming back from significant injuries. Now, the heart of this Bruin front is Gary Smith. He's a really high-quality defensive tackle and probably the best interior guy. So if he's back and playing at a high level, that could go a long way in neutralizing the advantage that UCLA might have on the interior going against what I think is one of the best offensive lines in college football. Question number 4. Can UCLA's passing attack create against Utah's secondary? We got Nico Iamaleava. His question marks on the outside are real. We'll see what his personnel looks like at wide receiver. But I think Nico will always have the ability to threaten and keep plays alive and manufacture big plays. Problem is he might miss a few as well. And he's going against a secondary that's the strength of the defense. Utah returns their entire starting secondary. That group ranked 5th in the Big 12 in passing yards allowed per game last year. I'm taking the Utah Utes in this game. I think they can shut down Nico Iamaleava. I still have questions about what this weaponry looks like for Nico Iamaleava. I have questions about the offensive line. I don't have questions about Utah's offensive line, and I don't have questions about the athletic ability of Devin Dampier. You guys are going to be really excited when you get a chance to watch this young man. He can really play and really create, and will be very exciting for Utah all season long. Moving on to Sunday's games. We have some intriguing matchups on Sunday. We will start with a game at 3 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN. It's Virginia Tech against South Carolina. South Carolina is currently around a 7.5-point favorite. Compelling SEC versus ACC clash in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. South Carolina, reigning SEC Coach of the Year, Shane Beamer, right on the tail end of a 9-4 campaign last year. Virginia Tech arrives in Atlanta with a few more question marks. Brent Pry enters year number 4. A lot of pressure to kind of show some results. 6-7 last year was a little bit frustrating given the preseason expectations that this team had. They were competitive, but they struggled to win when it mattered most. They were unbelievably 0-5 in one-possession games last year. Can they flip that on its head this year? We will find out. The quarterback matchup's a fascinating one. South Carolina's Lenora Sellers is incredible. If you haven't watched him, you're going to be so pleased with what you see on Sunday afternoon. He's 6'3", 240 pounds. He's got elite arm talent, but the athleticism is what really stands out. He threw over 2,500 yards last year with 18 touchdowns. His receiver core was somewhat disappointing, but it's the 674 rushing yards that was really impressive. When the play breaks down, that's when he's at his best. He is so strong in his lower body. He just shrugs off would-be tacklers. Kind of reminds you of like a young Ben Roethlisberger, keeps his eyes downfield and turns nothing into something with regularity throughout. From week 9 on, he led all FBS quarterbacks in missed tackles forced and yards after contact. So this guy's the real deal. And if you think the play is dead, it's not until he is down on the ground and the whistle is blown. Virginia Tech's Kyron Drones was incredible 2 years ago. In 2023, he showcased ridiculous potential. 2,900 yards of total offense, 22 touchdowns, but 2024 was a little bit up and down. Season got cut short, he got hurt, and it kind of showed how much the team relied on him being out there. Question number 1, can Virginia Tech's offensive line give Kyron Drones time? He's got a new offensive coordinator in Philip Montgomery, who I absolutely love. He's going to utilize some tempo. He's been with Baylor in the past. He's been all over the country. He's got a great scheme that will put some stress on the opposing defense by utilizing that tempo and then forcing the defense to dictate what they want to take away. Do they want to take away the pass? Do they want to take away the run? Those wide splits will make it challenging for them to line up on a down-in, down-out basis. But on the other side is Dylan Stewart. Now, Dylan Stewart is one of the best defensive ends in college football. He probably is the best, frankly. He's the most dominant edge defender in the SEC, arguably, And this is a Virginia Tech offensive line still trying to gel under a new coach and a new offensive system. If Dylan Stewart can go off and create a lot of disruption, he can single-handedly take over the game. And this is an offense that has not traditionally helped their tackles an awful lot. There are some new tackles for Virginia Tech. They better play at a really high level against what might be the most explosive edge rusher in the country. Question number 2, can South Carolina take the pressure off Lenora Sellers with the run game? Now, South Carolina has to establish the run game a little bit. Rasul Faison, Oscar Attaway, they could take some of the pressure off Lenora Sellers and prevent Virginia Tech's defense from pinning its ears back in obvious passing downs. I think balance is the key for South Carolina in this game. And then question number 3, how improved are South Carolina's wide receivers? We've talked all off season about that group being somewhat disappointing last year, but Nick Harbor is back. He's big and physical, and maybe he can take the next step. They also have Mazio Bennett in the slot, who I think has a chance to be very good, and a few other guys that were banged up last year, but now return and develop some off-season continuity with Lenora Sellers in the passing game. I'm taking South Carolina to win this game. I think they'll win it comfortably. I just think Dylan Stewart is the key. I think he will cause way too many problems off the edge for this Virginia Tech offensive line. The Sunday primetime game. Notre Dame takes on the Miami Hurricanes from Hard Rock Stadium. This will be 7:30 Eastern time on ABC. I think this might be the most intriguing game of week 1 because unlike Texas and Ohio State, I think both Texas and Ohio State are comfortably in the playoff field. This is a game that we will absolutely be talking about on Selection Day when we are announcing the 12 college football playoff teams. The winner of this one has a game and a half advantage because of how much I anticipate this committee utilizing the head-to-head to determine those teams that might be seeded 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is also a rivalry renewed. It hasn't been played since 2017, so it's always great to see a rivalry game in week 1. Let's start with Notre Dame and where they're at right now. I love their culture. I love their development. I love their continuity. I love this is a team that is rugged and blue collar. They emphasize physicality. They emphasize discipline. And they have done an incredible job of finding balance on both sides of the ball. They were top 5 in scoring offense, top 3 in scoring defense. Like we have seen this team do an awful lot over the last few years. I would expect no changes going into this year. The challenge is that they have to kind of sustain elite performance when they lost a lot of really good players to the NFL last year, and you have to replace a veteran quarterback. More on that position here in just a minute. Let's go to the Miami Hurricanes. They have kind of embraced an aggressive win-now approach, relentless recruiting by Mario Cristobal and his staff, go out and get elite, ready-made talent to just plug and play into their starting lineup to elevate every single position on the field. They had the most explosive offense in 2024, but they were not good on defense. That was why they were ultimately left out of the college football playoff. A dramatic defensive overhaul on that side of the ball. They go out, they hire a highly regarded defensive coordinator in Corey Heatherman, and they have an influx of talent to reshape the defensive roster, especially in the secondary, a position of weakness a year ago. Let's go to the quarterback matchup. Let's start with the freshman, C.J. Carr. He is the quarterback of Notre Dame. He emerged as the starter after what was a highly scrutinized battle against Kenny Minchey. It goes down to a, quote, gut feeling, according to Marcus Freeman. I think it goes down to the potential upside long-term that C.J. Carr could potentially provide. This has been an offense that has long relied on game managers at quarterback. Nothing wrong with that. I think C.J. Carr can not just manage the game, but he could elevate the offense as he continues to get more comfortable in Mike Denbrock's system. On the other side, it's Miami's Carson Beck. Now, if you look at some of the games that Carson Beck has played in, whether it's SEC championship games, Orange Bowl appearances, he has seen the bright lights in the past, and he will again this season. He will again week 1 in his Hurricanes debut. Now, his career stats are off the charts, 68 career completion percentage, 7,900 passing yards, 58 touchdowns. He has done a lot over the course of his career. He's played a lot of football. Everything that you can throw at him, he's seen. So I did not expect him to be at all shocked or spooked by some of the things that Notre Dame might throw at him with their scheme and with their pass rush. Question number 1. How much will Notre Dame protect C.J. Carr by running the football? Now, Mike Denbrock is going to tailor an offense that is going to heavily emphasize continuity, and he does not want to put his young quarterback in compromising situations too early in the season. I think the game plan will be built around their outstanding trio of running backs. Jeremiah Love has legitimate Heisman Trophy potential, went over 1,100 yards and 17 touchdowns last year. Not to be outdone, though, is his running mate, Jadarian Price, who's really powerful, really efficient, and will absolutely be the Robin to Jeremiah Love's Batman. But don't forget about Aeneas Williams as well. He's also really good on third down and a capable pass catcher out of the backfield. Don't be surprised if Jeremiah Love is utilized a lot in the passing game. Could see him playing a bunch of different positions. If they want to go with 2 running back sets, you could easily take Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love and motion Jeremiah Love out to the slot. He could be an effective slot receiver as well. So keep an eye on that. Maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. We'll find out if it does in this game. Miami on the other side, their defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, really interesting system. It's a 4-2-5 system, 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs. They create a lot of confusion and disruption. This system really does a great job of disguising coverages. They do a good job of moving in the pre-snap, and they also do a really good job of disguising pressures. Sometimes when they blitz, you don't even see it coming. They do a really good job of kind of covering things up. But I think in this game, and as the season goes along, they're going to rely on elite play up front defensively. I don't think they're going to be doing a lot of blitzing early on. I think they know that their defensive end, Ruben Bain, is a potential first-round pick, and he is as disruptive as you could possibly want on the edge of the defense. They also have on the other side Akeem Mesidor, not to be outdone, and they have some really talented guys on the inside that they are very excited about. So we'll find out more how those guys match up as the game kicks off on Sunday night. Question number 2. How much chemistry does Miami's passing attack have in this game? Now, the chemistry building process was hampered by the fact that Carson Beck was unable to participate in spring camp. He was recovering from a torn UCL that he suffered at the end of the 24 season. They have a largely rebuilt receiver core, relying on a combination of really talented but somewhat unproven underclassmen. You also have some transfers coming in. You got JoJo Trader, you got CJ Daniels, you got Keelan Marion. CJ Daniels was at LSU, but prior to that, he was at Liberty. Keelan Marion was at BYU. He's a speedster. Daniels is kind of a do-it-all guy, and then JoJo Trader's a guy that's super explosive. There's a few others, too, that could very well factor in that are freshmen that might actually become impact players for Miami here early in the season. On the other side, the defense for Notre Dame, they lose Xavier Watts, they lose Benjamin Morrison to the NFL. Morrison was lost for most of last season, and the secondary really didn't miss a beat. They are anchored by their corner, Leonard Moore, who is an All-American candidate, has already established himself as a legitimate lockdown corner. He's just a true sophomore, and what he did as a true freshman last year was off the charts good. It was just ridiculous to watch that young man play. On the other side, you have Christian Gray, who's a junior, really talented, battle-tested guy. Those two on the outside probably create the most talented duo in the country at the cornerback spot. You also have Aiden Schuler. They're in the back end at safety. They're going to be just fine at the back end. It should be one of the strengths of their team. Question number 3. Can Notre Dame create pressure with their pass rush? This has been the Achilles heel of Carson Beck. When he feels pressure, his performance drops significantly. And we know that the Irish are going to try to attack Carson Beck over and over and over again. Force him into making some bad decisions. He threw 12 picks last year. Maybe that relentless pressure will lead to him pressing a little bit and throwing the ball into traffic. The good news is for Carson Beck, he has an elite offensive line anchored by 2 outstanding tackles. Francis Maui-Noah, CC Maui-Noah, 5-star recruit, high future NFL draft pick. He'll line up on the right side. On the left side is Markel Ball, who at 6'9", 340 pounds, has unbelievable length. So even if he gets beat in the pass rush, he's still got to run around him. He's got long arms. It's going to be very hard to get around. They are great from an edge rushing perspective, though, at Notre Dame. Bryce Young, also remarkably long at 6'7". He's got a high motor, expecting a huge breakout here in his sophomore year. And then Boubacar Traore, who is explosive, got hurt early in the season last year, but was leading all FBS freshmen in sacks per game in 24 prior to the injury. So really good edge defenders for Notre Dame. Can they apply pressure going against outstanding tackles for the Miami Hurricanes? And then question number 4, do penalties play a role in this game? Now, Miami has consistently been the more penalized team in this matchup. Last year, they were 118th in penalty yards per game. Notre Dame, on the other side, not elite from a penalty standpoint, but they were considerably better than the Miami Hurricanes. They were 66th. So do penalties and mistakes play a potential role in this game? I will not pick this game. I will be calling this game alongside Sean McDonough and Molly McGrath, and we hope you guys tune in. 7:30 Eastern Time on ABC Sunday night. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. But before we get you out of here, I want to make sure I give you our Thursday tradition, our giant killers. Now, these were really, really good last year. Interpret that as you will. You can utilize the spread. You can utilize the number. I am not picking outright upsets. I'm just saying these are teams that might make the favorites very, very uncomfortable in this first week of action. Let's start with the Thursday afternoon evening soiree. The South Florida Bulls are a 6.5-point dog against the Boise State Broncos. Watch out for the South Florida Bulls. The Toledo Rockets are a 9.5-point underdog against the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky has Ole Miss coming to town next week. Toledo has beaten SEC teams in the past. 10 points is an awful lot. Be careful if you are Kentucky. The Baylor Bears, I already told you, I think they get the win against the Auburn Tigers. They are a giant killer as well. The Charlotte 49ers playing an in-state battle against the Appalachian State Mountaineers. That line is 6.5. Be careful, App State. Be very, very careful. Cincinnati is a 6.5-point dog against Nebraska. I think Nebraska needs to be very careful in this game. Cincinnati's got a great quarterback and an elite run game. That's one that could get a little bit dicey. And then finally, everyone's favorite Suns, the Akron Zips, are a 6.5-point dog against Wyoming. Akron this weekend might just be a giant killer. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. We really appreciate you guys tuning in for today's show. We love our Thursday show, and we hope you do too. If you do, leave us a rating, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choosing. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, intern Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing weekend. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.